M35a2 deuce and a half. This is the one I call the Whistler. This is a 1971. Why are we not level? Make you level. This truck is a 71 AM General M35a2 with a C model turbo, the one that whistles. So I call it the Whistler. So, these seats, or this running board seat, you will find, if you drive one of these, you will find yourself at the ATM sitting on this, doing the little code thing, because you can't do it from the door. Just, these are nice and convenient for doing ATM withdrawals. I got a cheat sheet because there's a lot of things I want to cover and not forget. All right. These trucks were designed in the late 1940s. And the people who meant to use them were a lot younger, thinner, and shorter than me, and probably a lot of people watching this video. So remember that. Driver and passenger comfort was not anywhere near the top of the list when they designed these. These things were designed to haul 2.5 tons of cargo off-road. And the military considers off-road anything not on a dirt road. So they do that perfectly. These things are great off-road. They're designed to carry 5 tons on road, up to 45 miles an hour. So anytime you're driving this, or driving one of these, more than 45 miles an hour, you're exceeding the design criteria. Yes, with 900 tires, you can run 56 miles an hour all day long. I've done it. With 1,100 tires like I have, you could run 62 or 63. This one's happy speed is 54 with the 1,100 tires. It just doesn't slow down for the hills, it just goes. That's something you gotta learn about your truck. All right. I bought this truck back in 08, 14 years ago. I changed all the fluids and did a bunch of things to it and had it running good. I'm gonna say I put 10 to 15,000 miles on it. At one time, I think my son Colton had the most passenger seat miles of any deuce and a half person in the whole United States, maybe the world. He had a whole bunch of passenger seat miles. Then he grew up, went off to college. I lost my Soldier B, a person to crawl up and go check that up there. Go crawl underneath there and turn the air valve off. He goes off to college, life happens, the truck's sat. 6 years now, or 5 years, and the truck needs some attention. I got in it the other day, batteries were dead, slaved it off with another truck, fired it up. The mist that was there last time I drove it is still there. The engine's missing. I did a video about that. You can see that. And brakes have no pressure. It's got a miss. A few other things. So I figured, all right, if I'm gonna do videos about how to fix the troubles with this truck, I might as well do a walk-around inspection for these trucks, pre-purchase inspection kind of thing. If you're looking to buy one of these, or you already have one and you just want to know what to check, that's what I'm trying to make here. So I got the cheat sheet, so I don't forget things. Got a checklist. First off, tools. Your truck, if it's M35 of any type, it should be all fractional standard tools. Yeah, they're bigger than normal, but fractional tools. Clothing. I'm wearing a flight suit, coveralls, whatever, because you get dirty on these things. Every time I've tried to stay clean while just driving this to town, 5 miles away, it doesn't work. I can vacuum, I can do everything I can in there. I can hose it all out. Excuse me. You get dirty. Just look at these things. So dress appropriately. And you're gonna get hot, you're gonna get sweaty. It's 60 degrees out this morning, so I'm doing this video because it's nice and cool. I'm probably sweating by the time this video's over. All right. Before you do anything on these trucks, chalk the wheels. These things weigh 14,000 pounds. Chalk the wheels. They roll really easy. Yes, they have a parking brake. Excuse me. The dry air got me. They have a parking brake that should, well, it's not allowed to move, but the parking brake is always out of adjustment, it seems. And you don't want to get run over by your own truck. 14,000 pounds would hurt. So chalk the wheels before you get underneath it. All right, for getting underneath it, I'm dressed up in my little flight suit, but I also carry in my toolbox a vinyl sign. This is just a sign somebody gave me. This is great for trying to crawl underneath it when I'm on the highway. Good way to get underneath the truck. Rain ponchos do the same thing. Just a little tip for how to get underneath these things without hurting yourself too bad. Sheets of plywood work really well too. All right, checking the tires. I'm gonna put some gloves on. There's 10 tires, and they're supposed to be at 50 psi each. Now, tires, if you notice, I got a Michelin XL tire in the front, and I got a Michelin XL spare, and I got NDT tires dual in the back. It's because I only had 6 Michelin XL tires several years ago, and one of them broke. So I only got 5 left. I had this thing running singles, and the way you tell the tire size, move this around a little bit. It says 11.00-20. That means the tread is 11 inches across. The .00 means the sidewall is also 100%, 11 inches. And we got a 20-inch wheel. So 11 plus 11 is 22 plus 20. These are 42-inch tall tires. And unlike the tires you buy for a regular truck, these were actually 42 inches tall. Makes it kind of nice. Checking tires. You can run a gauge, you can take a little thumper, dunk, 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 dunk. But you need to check your tires, especially the front ones. And like I'm pretty sure that one's flat. Of course, it's always the inside tire that's flat, never the outside tire. But while you're checking your tires, walking around, see how that axle is dry and clean right there. There's no oil in the axle, and there is. At least there better be. Or it's actually sealed up right. This one has got oil around it. But it's just a little coating. So it's a very small leak. And if you notice, it's mostly on this side, so it might have been sitting that way, maybe tilted, so this side was downhill a little bit. Check that as you walk around, because for the most part, these things hold their fluids pretty well. So they will hold their fluid. Now, I'm going to talk about the brake system more in a minute. But this is the service air for trailers. And I'm going to show the other side valve because you can see it better. Make sure the valve is shut. In theory, air comes out that valve every time you push the brake pedal. This one you can see better. Kind of. Oh, I put you in the shade. You are the shade blocker. There. This valve should have air in the tank. Yeah, there's air. The valve, when it's in line with the hose, is off, which is total opposite of anything else you do with valves and hoses. So keep that in mind. It's counterintuitive. All right, crawling under the truck, which is something you gotta do. My differential, I got little traces of oil, but not that bad. Now, if you notice on this one, there's some slimy goo on the inside of the wheel. I bet that wheel cylinder is leaking because this one over here is dry as a bone. So this wheel cylinder is probably leaking. You go up one. That one might be leaking a little bit. This one over here is dry. But checking out the middle axle, no obvious leaks, nothing on the ground. Things look good. Like I said, you're going to be crawling around these things a lot. Fuel tank. Fuel tank, 50 gallons. This is your intake fuel pump, in-tank fuel pump. And when you turn on the ignition, it should go. It has a fuel supply and a fuel return. You should be able to, with the key on, or with the ignition switch on, hear this thing going, and see fuel circulating through, because it will pump it and come right back. There's a breaker underneath here that sometimes will pop. I'm sorry, this is the vent, this is the return. Mine has diesel stains because I've pulled that pump out a few times lately because it was not working right. All right, batteries. It's a 24-volt truck. And I'm probably asking for trouble here. Batteries are in here. If you pull these up, slide the whole tray out. Right now, mine's locked in. I'm not going to unlock it. Check, just like a regular battery, regular car. Check your terminals for good non-corrosion and solid leads. Also for tie downs. I helped somebody recover one of these trucks several years ago, and the batteries were not tied down. We drove into the night, and the batteries shorted each other out. Had no lights, no battery, and it just melted one of the batteries. It could have started a fire, destroyed the whole truck. That'd been bad. So make sure your batteries are tied down. All right, let's crawl under the truck for brakes. The way this thing works is it's a 1948 design braking system. This is the push rod between the brake. Quit focusing on my arm. This is the push rod between the brake pedal and the master cylinder. This is the master cylinder. Just a big chunk of steel. Has one line coming off of it to the air pack. And there's one line from the air pack. Oh, is that the right one? No, that's not the right one. That's one of the air lines. The front of the air pack. Yeah, that's the right one. That's the brake line. That brake line goes off to the brakes. And what the air pack does, and this is a short style. See, it's got this long 2 or 3 inch bolt extension. The older air packs went all the way back to here, and the bolt went on the end. So there's short packs and there's long packs. I have not been able to find a rebuild kit for a short pack. I have rebuilt the long packs in my gasser, and I have 2 already rebuilt and ready to go. So when this one ever fails, I can put a long pack on here. They're interchangeable. They fit right in, and it works. Now, people get all worried about the brake system on these things. It's a single line brake, as in all your brake fluid goes through one line to all 6 corners of the vehicle. If there's a leak anywhere, you lose your fluid and you lose all your brakes. Since 1968, all cars in America, all vehicles sold in America are supposed to have dual line brake systems, which means if one side fails, you still have something else to stop you. This one doesn't have that. The 1986 and newer Air Force trucks do, and I've never seen how, I never looked at one enough to know how they work. All right, but the way it is, fluid comes in here when you push the pedal up here, fluid comes out the master cylinder, through here, and then it goes out here and back up. So when there's no air in the system, it works like a regular brake. When, we can't see it, it's on the other side. When fluid comes into here, it causes something to move backwards. There's a big piston in here and a small piston in here. When it moves, it opens up an air valve, which puts air in back here. The air hits the back of this piston and it slams forward. When that piston slams forward, it pushes your fluid with a whole lot more pressure to the wheel cylinders. So it's power brakes by air. It's called an air over hydraulic brake system. You should be able to stop the truck without the air pack working. Should. We'll talk about that more in a few minutes. All right. Zoom out some. Transfer case with the parking brake. That is your parking brake. Lots of lube points on this thing. Transmission, my PTO. Front axle. You notice my front, I got dry. My axle boots, right here. Not CV boots, axle boots. I replaced them 8 or 9 years ago. They're still holding. Oh yes. If any of the forums for these kind of trucks, people car underneath there and get online and say, "Oh, there's a bolt missing from my truck. My life is over. What am I going to do?" It's the fording plug, and this is it right here. It's a half inch ratchet or driver. Unscrew it, screw it in there, and you're ready to go underwater. No, you're not. Don't do that. It keeps the water from filling in there too much, but you want to keep it so oil can drain out, because it's going to leak oil. It's going to leak oil. So this is the holder for it. 715 doesn't have that. 715 you're supposed to stick it in the glove box. It means they're all lost. So if you have one of these trucks and this on the bottom is wide open, it's okay. It's supposed to be that way. And fording operations, read the Dash 10 manual about unusual operating conditions. If you go much higher than the middle of the axle, you're inviting a whole lot of work. All right, let's go back to this truck. Oh, so we talked about brakes. We talked about under the hood. Under the hood. I guess first we ought to talk about the fuel filter. This thing has 3 fuel filters. And the primary filter, crawl back underneath here. Oh, ooh, sticker burst, how fun. There's the primary filter. If you turn on the ignition, you should hear the pump going, and you can open this valve here and it'll go, it'll drain out. And a lot of times if you're having idle troubles or it's just running not quite right, drain this one. Actually bleed it too. There's a bleeder on top. The fuel then follows this line across. If you've been off-road, this line here, and playing around the mud and the rocks, and your truck doesn't seem to want to go very fast, come look at this. This line's the fuel line. I've seen them smushed and flattened out where people don't have enough fuel getting to their engine to do much anything. All right, let's crawl up on top of this sucker. Put the camera back over here. I'll try doing this all in one shot. It might or might not work. We'll see. All right. We have both sides of the hood, yeah. So this truck has the winch. The winch has this lever, which engages the gears, So when you engage the PTO inside the cab, they start spinning the shaft over here. Shaft down the bottom down here. Spins the shaft. This engages the gears for the drum to that. There's also, now I keep it in the out. Out is this way, which means you can hit your PTO lever inside. It's not going to do anything out here. Otherwise, if this was in and you accidentally hit that lever, you either have cable coming out everywhere, or you're going to wrap your whole bumper and start pulling the frame rails in. This winch will destroy, it'll eat itself. It'll eat the truck. Don't do it. Keep it out. Now this one also has the Freewheel Lock. And if you forget about that, there, it's locked back in. No, it's not. There it is. If you forget about that and turn this in and hit that, you'll shear right off and probably break some housings in here. Let me wind mine up a little bit tighter. So these things will bite you. I just got my finger. There, now it's locked back in. All right. If you come across one of these trucks and the grill guard here doesn't look like this, or the headlights are down here, means it's a non-winch truck. The headlights are up, that was a winch truck. If these are on top, it's a 1954 or newer. 52 and 53, it was supposed to go the other way. They look different. My gasser is that way. They put it so that it's like this because sitting like this all the time, water gets in there and this thing rusts up. Not good. Not good at all. Now, one of the reasons I got this truck was because of that step. I thought that step was so cool. It's like, oh, I got a step. This is awesome. Well, the step's a pain in the butt. Pull the pin, you gotta do that, do this, put the pin back in, and you still have a moving around step. And if you leave it down, you're gonna rip it off. And it doesn't really help you much because you only get up this far and it's all wobbly. Yes, that's a neat thing to have. I find myself never using it, except it is a great cooler mount. I can put a 5-gallon water cooler right here, bungee cord around that. I got water in it every time I'm driving this thing. I do that. That's what I use it for. All right, now I gotta figure out how to do this without dropping the phone. All right, let's talk about something. Right here, this thing here. That is the hood support rod. I'll be connecting that in a second once I crawl up here. I'll bring the camera in closer too. So picking the hood up, I found it best to get it up that far. If I can, crawl on up here. And then I walk it back. And then there's the latch up on top that will hook onto this rod. It's hard to do one-handed. Which makes it so now the hood won't slam on your head. All right. Secure hood in raised position before servicing. Just did that. Warning, engine oil level cold check, 1.5 inches over full. What are they talking about? All right, here's what they're talking about. Whoa, let me put this down. Just gonna have a seat. Start talking about the engine compartment. So these things were made to operate from the tropics to the Arctic circles. This is the oil filters. These fancy aluminum adapters for spin-on filters I put on here. It's supposed to have canister filters that have the bulk going through them and all that kind of stuff. These are the oil filters. They're upside down. They're made, the stock ones are, so that the oil drains out of here and goes to the oil pan. That way, if you're ever in Arctic conditions, there is a flame heater for this engine that actually has piping that goes through the oil pan, the bottom of the oil pan, and will warm the oil up. So when you start it, your oil moves and it fills the filters up. So you operate this truck the first 20, 30 seconds of running on dry oil, dry filters and dry bearings. That just bothered me. So Joe Tonka, and I think he's in New York State, he offers these adapters in the anti-drain back filters. I live in Texas. I don't have Arctic conditions here. I have the anti-drain back spin-on filters on here that I have oil pressure when I start it. It's kind of nice. All right, well, I showed the front fuel filter. The fuel then comes around to the secondary fuel filters. Or I guess, let's see, in to this one, then over to this one, then out to the injection pump. And right here's the injection pump. Okay, there's a bleeder. I'm not going to open it because I don't have my pump on. If you change anything in your system, you got to turn the pump on, do the filter under the front fender, then come open this bleeder until you get fuel coming out, then close it. Then it's always a good idea to open the drains on the bottom and see what kind of crud comes out. That's part of your fuel filter process. Now, to check the oil, like it said, you have to go 1.5 inches above. Well, I have the anti-drain back filters, and it is threaded in. It's hard to do sitting down. Where am I at? Oh, I'm a couple inches above. Either I'm making oil, no, it doesn't smell like diesel, or need to wipe it off because I ran it just a little bit ago. Anyway, the oil stick screws in and is sealed. That's part of the fording kit thing, going underwater. Now mine has the flame heater starter thingy. So we got this, we got these, which is supposed to put fuel into the air intake manifold, light a fire inside to help it start when it's cold. Mine leaked fuel on the turbo and caused smoke. I disconnected it. Now I got it kind of looped back on itself. If you find one that has it working, great. I never had to use it. I started this down to 17 degrees Fahrenheit and it right up right away. It doesn't care how cold it is. Air regulator. The air regulator, I have rebuilt this one, but that turns off and on the air compressor. As far as working, the air compressor is always turning. I'm going to show you that next. But I just wanted to say, the regulator here, click, click on your dash. One time I was pulling a trailer, I was pulling 3 round bales of hay, 100 miles in this, behind this truck. As soon as I left the place 100 miles away with 3 bales of hay, click, air would turn off, click, on, click, off. 100 miles every 5 seconds, that thing clicking. I stopped a couple times, beat it with a hammer. It didn't help any. I had to pull it apart. There was a little bit of dirt in there. If you can't maintain pressure and you hear it clicking on the wall, on the firewall, that's it. That's your air regulator. And here's the air compressor. This one is air cooled. It's an air cooled single cylinder compressor. Except you see all the oil around the base here? This thing has pressurized oil from the engine going into it. And most people, their brakes are not adjusted good enough to stop the vehicle without air pressure. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. I should have done that when I was under the truck. Crawling back down again. This is a double failure. If the air compressor comes apart, you lose oil pressure, you lose all the oil in your engine. I've helped somebody bring a 109 shop van back from Las Cruces, New Mexico, and this started leaking right here, this gasket on the bottom. While driving it, we could see oil come across the hood, and it kind of stopped right around here on the hood, just enough to see from the driver's seat. We made 600 miles. We stopped and looked at it. It wasn't getting any worse, but it was squirting every now and then. Oil would squirt out. Had good oil pressure, but we had a bad starter motor. So we didn't turn it off. We took a piece of chalk and we actually took a picture of where it was, and it never got any bigger, so we kept driving. But the air compressor, the air-cooled one, you lose your air and you can lose all your engine oil. My M35 gasser has a water-cooled 2-cylinder compressor. That thing's a triple failure. Engine oil, engine cooling, and brakes. So the compressor is important. And there's something called an unloader valve in here, which is what the regulator over there controls, that makes it start compressing. But in the meantime, the belt, mine's kind of loose, but you can see these bolts here. There's a special tool to adjust the thickness of this pulley to make the belt tight. And you could maybe use a pipe wrench, but if you get one of these trucks, you need the special air compressor adjusting pulley, or air compressor pulley adjusting wrench. It is worth it. All right, what else are we supposed to talk about up here? Fuel filters, flame assist, air compressor, coolant level. Big old brass tank radiator with a hard line for a vent, and it goes down a little ways and stops. There is no expansion. If you fill this thing all the way up to the top of the brim here, it's going to puke out quite a bit. Mine is full to happy level. When I can see just a little bit, see that moisture down there? That's it. That's full for mine. Because if I fill it all the way up and drive it for 30 minutes, that's where it's going to be when next time I start it up. It's going to be down there. Yeah, there's a yellow line supposed to be up to there. No, mine's happy level is down at the bottom. All right, I'm going to try crawling back down again without falling or dropping the camera. Ugh. Yay, I made it. Okay. If you're doing a pre-purchase inspection on one of these things, all the stuff we just talked about, look at. This is a port to take oil for a sample. You can take some oil to send off for a sample. I installed a heater. This is the heater intake right here for inside the cab. Well, my heater's not here because last time I worked on the injection pump, it was in the way, and I just haven't put it back on again. It's supposed to have a little air duct in over here, but I found these things take so long to warm up. And once they do warm up, if you got the windows up, the cab's warm because all the engine and transmission and transfer case heat. The heater doesn't really work except for defrost. The heater is good for defrosting. That's about it. All right. Air tanks. So, can't see it from here because it's under the truck. Back down we go, spelunkering again. There's a lot of this in these trucks. Ooh. air tanks. I got 2 drains. It worked. The air came out without spraying water or oil or anything else all over me. You need to do that. Who knows what crud or how long it's been since someone's drained the tanks if you're looking at a truck. Or your own truck if you hadn't done it in a while. All right. Let me start going inside. These things have super simple door handles. You gotta spray oil on them. The hinges, super simple. Spray oil, penetrating fluid, whatever, every now and then. You're not gonna hurt the paint. The paint's caulk, chemical agent resistant coating. You can see where I put some penetrating oil on mine a couple days ago. Next time it rains, it'll be gone. All right, MWO tag. Has a number, 829 of 89. I spent time looking up that number. Get rid of the spider web. And turns out, that means they install seat belts. Yeah, that's what that was. That was a seat belt maintenance work order, MWO. The self-retracting seat belts, I guess. I don't know. But they install seat belts. All right. If you look at it, you got this thing here, welded onto this thing here. It's because the original cab had none. It didn't have either of these. The original I-51 cab was square. Then they added this, and it wasn't enough. So they had to add this over the years. So if you're looking at one of these and it doesn't have this one, either someone's taking it out or it is an old gasser, more than likely. Just something to think about. Up to page 2. All right, door hinges we talked about, latches talked about, windshield. I need to put the hood down. That's all right, we'll leave it up. These things are a cool design, but when it sits out in the weather like mine has, look what happens. Water catches in the bottom metal, rust out, expands, cracks the glass. Yeah, my glass is cracked. I gotta replace that windshield panel. And still moves. Now, if you're driving down the road, there's vents down below. They'll open, they'll bring air in, and the windows go down, of course. They should. And what works the best to keep you cool is to open the window about as much as that is. Actually, about 1 water bottle thickness. If you can stick a water bottle in there, on both those, windows up. I have driven these things in 100-degree weather, and as long as I'm going more than 30 miles an hour, I'm not sweating. Because the air comes in through the windshield, forces all the heat for the engine and stuff out through the holes in the floor. Windows up, vents closed, front windshield open a little. Works really well. So yeah, I need to replace that glass. Something else to look at. I have a replacement. I replaced this one a year or so ago, and now I got to replace that one. But that's something to keep an eye on. The glove box should have a seal. Mine is, it's getting all gooey. I keep a dash 10 manual in there and air chucks and air pressure gauge. But it's supposed to keep things dry. Sometimes it does. Okay, this is the parking brake. That's off. This one, you can twist the end and adjust the tightness of the brake. That's on. A lot of times, someone leaves these trucks sitting out in the weather, this thing will freeze in this position or the cable will freeze on. It's really annoying. So if you're gonna let yours sit for a while, chalk the wheels, leave that off, because otherwise you won't be able to move the truck. All right, Simple gauges. Oil pressure, miles per hour, tachometer, temperature of the engine, fuel level, volts, and air pressure. I'm at 20 or so, 15 air pressure. It's going to get real loud in here. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to turn the truck off and tell you what I did. So, first off, brake check. I know I have no brake pedal. I have no brake pedal at all because I have no fluid. It goes all over the floor. A lot of times, if someone has a good truck with good brakes, but they haven't adjusted the shoes, and I'll show you about doing minor and major adjustment in a little bit here. You can go all the way to there, or maybe to there, without any air pressure, and it stops, and you think there's no brakes. It might go all the way to the floor. I know I have no brake fluid in it. And right here is that's how you access the master cylinder to put brake fluid in. We'll do that once we get down to it. All right, clutch. About an inch of movement down there. Moved about an inch. This is all mechanically adjusted, mechanical linkage. So the clutch should have about an inch of free play. That's what you want to have. These things do not need electricity to run. The on-off switch is going to turn the buzzer on. All that does is turn on the gauges and the buzzer. It doesn't do a darn thing about the engine running. This is about the engine running. So right now I got it off. Push that in, and it also turns on the starter button. So I'm going to start it up and let it whistle for a few minutes, or a few seconds. I'm going to turn it back off again. The air pressure buzzer should stop at around 60 psi. You'll notice I'm running the hash mark in the green on the volts. Turn it off, turn off the power, pull the cable. You can hear the turbo wind down. All right, I didn't talk about the turbo. Let me go back over what I just did. Start it, showed you how the air buzzer goes off at 60 psi, and I had voltage. The front axle on the newer ones, there's a switch here. Wait for it. You can't hear it, but you can hear it in a second. That sends power to engage the front axle. That gives you, on this one, 10-wheel drive. Right now we only got it 8-wheel drive. When you do that, 10-wheel drive. This light lights up. It should. Oh, it doesn't light up. I got to work on that. I got wires to it. I'll work on that. Turns off the air. Air engaged front axle. The older trucks didn't have that. They had a Sprag overrunning clutch. So you have to choose first gear to go anytime the truck's moving forward, and you have to choose reverse before the truck even rolls backwards. Otherwise, you'll get something called wind up, which is a whole other story of bad things. All right. It tells you what manuals you want to use for this truck. 23, 20, 209, 10, 12, 20, 20P. That's all they want the operator to use. And 34 and 34P for the people whose job is to rebuild things. Now you notice the shift pattern is kind of odd. You got 1, 2, 3, up and over to 4, then up to 5. What idiot made that? Well, the gassers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those engines revved higher than the multi-fuel diesels. So when they made it a multi-fuel, it couldn't rev as high as the gasser engine. They changed out fourth gear. There's 4 parts that are different. and made it an overdrive. So you go 1, 2, 3, over to the old fifth gear, which is 1-to-1 ratio, then up to overdrive. So this third to fourth shift, besides being a weird pattern, is a huge jump in ratio because you're missing the old fourth gear. And that's where the transfer case lever comes in. You can go 1 through 4, do the little hop over to 4 in low range, get to 5th in low range, then go to high range transfer case, then back to 4th, and it's not a bad of a jump, and then you go to 5th and you're cruising. I do that when I'm flat to another deuce and a half or anything really heavy. That's how I drive it. All right, we gotta talk about, oh, this is gonna hurt. Okay, the way you check the injection pump. I know mine is, my engine's missing. I'm not gonna do it to my engine. But with a warmed up engine, you should be able to start it up, look at your gauges, and then slowly advance the throttle, and it will go to 2960 RPM, 2960, and hold it. You should be able to floor it. Do it easily. Just wind it up slowly, and you should be able to hold the floor, and it should stabilize at 2960. If it doesn't reach that high, something's wrong with the engine, or the fuel filters, the injection pump, or the air filter. There's a whole technical manual all about that, about the injection pump. It is an amazing manual. They take a vehicle that won't rev more than 2,000 RPM and they change pieces all the way through the manual. They change out this filter, change out this line, change out that filter, and they keep gaining a few hundred RPM until they get 2920. That is an actual service test for these trucks. Is you just wind it up, slowly apply power at idle, and hold it to the floor. And it should stabilize just below 3,000 RPM. If it won't get above 2,500 RPM, if you're trying to buy the vehicle, you don't want that truck. Something's wrong with it. It might be a simple air filter. It might be that one of the fuel filters is clogged. It could be an in-tank pump. Who knows what it is. If you want to take that risk, fine. But that's a test to take. All right. Talk about the front. Axle engagement. Let's talk about turbos. You heard this thing whistle. It just whistled and whistled and whistled. So there's my turbo. Looks like a little snail. The snail turbo on the exhaust side is the C model. If it's nice and fat and symmetrical all the way across, it's a D model. The C model is the Whistler, the D model is not. That's just, in theory, the C model, the Whistler, gives you, these things take like 2 hours to get to 60 miles an hour, so it might give you a 10 seconds better acceleration. And supposedly the D model turbo will help you climb a hill at 12 miles an hour instead of 11 miles an hour. There's not much difference. These things are not performance vehicles, except for hauling 2.5 tons off-road below 20 miles an hour, or hauling 5 tons on-road above or below 45 miles an hour. Then they're perfect. All right, you can hear I got a leak in one of my air valves. So I have to do wheel cylinders. I have to do find out when I miss, probably cylinder heads. I got things to do. But hopefully this was a good walk around, show you how things worked, show you what to check on these things, and what to look for. They're pretty neat trucks. It's a jungle gym. Or don't forget that. Jungle gym, you're going to get dirty on. And you're going to smell. Your favorite cologne will be diesel number 2.